Julius Malema has just thrown everyone into a corner, and honestly, he's opened the floodgates to questions. Like if Parliament is doing their investigation and the Madlanga Commission is doing theirs. Whose investigation actually matters more? And whose report will be implemented? And how come there are two investigations happening at the same time into the same matter? And also, is this a situation where politicians are trying to capture a viral moment from this entire Genome Konazi investigation? And also, on top of that, could we have a potential repeat of what happened yesterday with Julius Malema? Right now, it's less about answers and more about confusions. South Africans and the broader public are watching these two investigations into the same issue, and everyone's asking the same thing. Who's really in charge of discovering just how compromised and corrupt the South African police system is? So let's rewind a bit and let's sort of unpack this mess and also how we got into the situation where Julius Malema said what he said in Parliament yesterday. So Parliament has set up its own team to investigate claims that the police are being influenced by shady forces. But what happened is that instead of doing their own digging and doing their own investigation, they plan to use a statement that Genome Konazi already gave to another investigation, the one run by Justice Madlanga, also known as the Madlanga Commission, which was created by the executive/president himself. In simple terms, what Julius Malema was complaining about is that we're having two investigations into the same crime, one by Parliament, the Parliament Ad Hoc Committee, and one by the executive. And now Parliament says, hey, you know what? Let's copy the executive/president's homework instead of doing our own. But this is where Julius Malema came in and he said, no, we are not about to do that, and raises a lot of questions. And that is exactly what he was questioning, and we'll get into that in just a second. So let's break down and deep dive into all of these issues and also how we got to this point. But before we get into any of that, share your thoughts in the comments section what you think about this, where you land with this entire situation and with Julius Malema's statements in Parliament about the supplementary statement being given, what you think about this ongoing, these two investigations. Can hope and faith be restored? And if you haven't already, hit the subscribe button and join the other side. Join the other side, a growing community where we debate stories from both sides of the political spectrum. Honestly, the other side is the best place to be when it comes to unpacking issues just like this. All right, let's continue.
And on which basis do you want General Mkhwanazi to take an oath? Because before us, we have no statement of General Mkhwanazi. We have a supplementary statement. Supplementing what? Because he must first depose to us a statement, and if there is anything to be supplemented, it should be done so. The statement we have is a statement he disposed to the commission. We have said to this legal team here, time and again, that we are not a junior committee of the commission. There is no statement of General Mkhwanazi before us. There is a statement of General Mkhwanazi to the commission.
And to be honest, Julius Malema's point is valid. And it got to such a point where they actually had to take a 6-hour break to sort of figure out how to proceed and move forward with this entire situation. So with the terms of reference outline the responsibilities of each investigation. In the ad hoc committee's terms of reference, their responsibilities are a lot more specific, detailed, and very outlined in comparison to the Madlanga Commission's terms of reference and their responsibilities. They have a broader scope in terms of what they can do, and in that situation, the Justice Madlanga, has more liberty in terms of being able to determine where the investigation flows. That's the first thing. So now what happens now is that with Parliament, they're also investigating the same findings and the same entire situation around Genome Konazi, right? But with that situation, they wanted to use the same statement from the Madlanga Commission. But then Julius Malema is saying that what about the separation of powers? As Parliament, Parliament's duty is to oversee the executive, oversee this policing department. And as a result, when you're just trying to just copy and paste what was said in the Madlanga Commission, it somewhat undermines this duty that Parliament has. And that's where he was really questioning the integrity of this investigation and also how it would unfold if they did decide to use this entire statement. So what happened? They took a 6-hour break to try and figure out what to do, because it sort of like threw everyone off. And on top of that, a leading advocate, Norman Arons, actually pinpointed that, you know what, we do have permission from the commission to use this statement, General Mkhwanazi's statement, in this same investigation by the ad hoc committee. However, Julius Malema's point is really valid, because if you think about it, these are separate bodies, these are separate branches of the government, and how can you just take what was used in one investigation that is meant to oversee government?
We cannot use the statement of the commission. We are not a junior of the commission. We have nothing to do with what the commission is doing. We are a parliament, a committee of parliament. Now you want to use a material that is being used and sourced by a commission established by the executive in this separate arm of the state. It is wrong, it is unconstitutional. We have to do things properly.
Now, you begin to see where the issue sort of lies over here. Because Justice Madlanga is able to guide and also decide how deep they go into this investigation, how much they want to also prioritize different things within this investigation, why this is an issue. Because when General Mkhwanazi was being asked questions, when evidence was being led, it was in a very specific manner to that commission. So now if Parliament is going to be using that same statement in their investigation, it undermines the separation of powers that is there within government that we sort of abide by and South Africa is governed by. But the thing is, right, this is an independent function. Parliament is there to oversee the actions of the presidency and the executive. So now when you're taking the work and all the types of questions and answers that were given in the Madlanga Commission for another independent investigation body, that's where the issues begin to lie. And that brings us to our key issues over here with issue number 1. When both investigations are done, whose report actually counts? Whose report is actually more important than the other? Which one takes precedent? And which report should the public actually care about in trying to resolve the issue of police interference and also corruption that is being alleged? And also, what happens if they reach different conclusions from the investigations? Which one will government act on and implement, right? No one has clarified this, and this is one of the biggest concerns that Julius Malema raised on day one, and it's already making waves. It sort of makes you question, right? As this is unfolding, how will this commission continue to unfold? Will it be the same as this day one? And Julius Malema is right. How did this get past all of Parliament's legal teams? And on top of that, they have an extremely qualified advocate who is leading evidence. And they miss something as simple such as the doctrine of separation of powers.
And therefore, General Mkhwanazi is not proper before us. And this legal team has failed us because in the deliberation.
And it got so bad, they had to take a 6-hour break to figure this thing out. What happened is that they figured it out and they opted to revamp General Mkhwanazi's statement, basically making it appropriate for Parliament. So it sort of makes you question if this is the only incident that went under the radar, or if there are many others just like this that will come soon, or maybe was Julius Malema a little too observant? Which brings us to issue number 2, duplication. So General Mkhwanazi, he gives his statement at the Madlanga Commission in Pretoria, and then he now has to fly down all the way to Cape Town to also give his statement there, and also organizing his own diary, also making himself available for this, right? If that's the case, are we going to be seeing other officials like General Masemola also having to do the exact same thing? Because you sort of have this situation where evidence is being given in the Madlanga Commission, right? And it somewhat seems like also going all the way down to Cape Town. How will this be realistically? Will they be sharing evidence? And will it also lead to the same issue that Julius Malema was saying, that Parliament is somewhat being treated as a subcommittee of the Madlanga Commission? And with that being said, how will this evidence be shared? How will it be used? As Advocate Norman Arons mentioned also, that they had permission from the commission to also use this evidence. So how will this work realistically, financially, and feasibly? And also bear in mind, taxpayers are coughing the bill for all of this stuff to figure out how deeply compromised South African policing is. So now with this being said, both these investigations are running at the same time. So how will this work logistically? Are they going to round up investigations at the same time? And also at the same time, Parliament's top legal advisors haven't explained the situation. And let's not forget, again, this is taxpayer funded. This means 2 investigations, 2 sets of reports, and there's no guarantee that either one will actually be used. Which brings us neatly back to issue number 1. Which report matters and what is the overall purpose of this exercise, right? This also leads us into issue number 3. What's the point of all of this stuff? So in the terms of reference, we've pinpointed that the ad hoc committee has their own duties and the Madlanga Commission also have their own duties that have been outlined. But they're similar. At the end of the day, they're simply just trying to figure out the extent of corruption and how compromised South Africa policing is. So with that being said, is this an oversight of an oversight? Is Parliament overseeing what the executive is doing with the Madlanga Commission? How does this work, having these 2 things work at the same time? Will Parliament debate the Madlanga Commission's report? How will they also debate their own report? How will they try and also get this enforced? And there's also no guarantee that government will enforce either of these or apply either of these reports. If Parliament and the presidency are both investigating the same allegation, what's the actual purpose of doing it twice? Parliament's job, again, is to oversee the executive. Meanwhile, the Madlanga Commission is the executive. It's the president's own investigation into these same claims. So in essence, we've got the referee and the player both reviewing the same match. You can see I love soccer. But the difference, one is supposed to hold the other accountable. But with that being said, right now, they are both playing detective in this situation. They're just trying to hold each other accountable, but they're both playing detective. So what's really happening here? Are we witnessing political theatre? Is this a race for relevance by politicians to be seen as taking General Mkhwanazi's comments as seriously? Or is it just a very expensive competition for who can investigate better? I'm kind of joking, but am I? But seriously, what do you guys think about this? And on top of this, right, where do you lean, like in terms of this entire outcome? Do you see a duplication of what was raised with Julius Malema, for example? And also, you sort of have this day one of this ad hoc committee. Already sparks were flying. And this is how things started. The rest of the investigation seems like it's about to get messy also. And it's quite clear that Julius Malema's comments didn't just challenge Parliament. They actually opened up a much bigger debate about how South Africa handles accountability, power, and transparency. And as taxpayers, as border South Africans, people who are invested in Project South Africa, we all deserve to know who's really running the show over here and whose voice and input actually matters in guiding this investigation. So, if you've made it this far, drop a comment below and tell me whose investigation you think will actually matter in the end. Is this like a battle for investigation, like a battle for reports? And hey, if you want to break from politics, have you ever heard about the world's most sacred lake? It's right here in South Africa, hidden deep in Limpopo in the Limpopo Mountains. So click the video right here to learn more about Africa's and honestly the world's most forbidden lake. And as always, thank you for watching and don't forget to subscribe to this channel, The Other Side, a place where we get to debate, discuss, and honestly share unpopular opinions sometimes. And yeah, I'll see you next time and bye for now. I'll see you. Bye.